Welcome Bill Nericcio from San Diego State University, who's going to share with us a little bit about his journey in and through Latinx pop cultural imaginaries. Welcome, Bill.
I'm very happy to be here. You've pulled me out of my pandemonium cave, and I'm very happy to talk about Latinx pop culture with you.
Tell me, Bill, like what point in your life did you decide I am going to dedicate a gazillion hours of my day and my life up until the day I die to research and write on issues of race, sexuality, gender in pop culture, but also just in literature and cultural phenomena generally? Yeah, tell us, like, was it a light bulb moment? And maybe you can share a little bit about some kind of surprises along the way to that journey where you are today.
Yeah, I guess there is an epiphany moment, and it happens when I was 19 years old. I was at the University of Texas at Austin. I was a biology major, planning to spend the rest of my life researching infectious diseases. I guess I'd be really happy right now during the COVID-19 panic. And I took an organic chemistry class, and I was going to flunk it. It was mind-shattering because I'd never really failed academically at anything. And I think I had a D+ or something. It was a large lecture, 300 student class with a horrible professor. And it just happens that same week, I had an English professor, and his name was Lance Bertelsen from Oceanside, California, which I didn't know about. And now I think it's hilarious because I just lived down the coast from Oceanside. And I was in office hour, and Lance Bertelsen told me, hey, Bill, you ever thought of being an English professor? I said, no, what's it like? And he said, well, when you travel, the university pays for it, and you only work 8 months out of the year. I said, wow, that sounds really good. And so I became an English major, and I started just studying mostly American and British literature. That was my focus. Around my senior year, I fell under the wing of Ramon Saldivar, who's at Stanford now. And I took a couple of classes with him. And when I was a senior, he let me sit in on a graduate seminar he was teaching because I had been admitted to an American Studies program at the University of Texas and a comparative literature program at Cornell. And I guess that's when it really, the world of Latin American cultural arts, of Latino cultural arts really turned my brain on fire. And I was lucky enough to finish my degree at Cornell, which was weird because they didn't really have they didn't have any Latino studies people, of course. This is the 80s. And John Cronick, the late, great editor of PMLA, actually supervised my first graduate special study on Chicano literature. And then this is what you get in the Ivies, luck upon luck. The semester after I worked with Cronick, Carlos Fuentes comes to do a visiting gig at Cornell for a semester, and I get appointed his TA.
Wow.
And from there on, it was Latin American this, Latin American that. If we have time, though, there's a kind of break with Latin American literature that takes place my first year as an assistant professor. By then, this is 1988, I'm an assistant professor at the University of Connecticut, and I'm lecturing on Mexican intellectual history. And I always remember Orson Welles as Quinlan in Touch of Evil. He says, "You people are touchy." But I was lecturing, and I could have sworn when I said Mexican intellectual, I heard a laugh from the back of the room, like a chuckle or a chortle from this young woman who was I remember as my far left back of the room. And I kind of had a meltdown in the classroom. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe she was just a closeted racist or out of the closet racist. But I thought she was laughing at the idea of the conjunction of those two words, Mexican and intellectual. Mm-hmm. And that really pushed me over the deep edge. It was a little after that incident that I started writing about Rita Hayworth and about Speedy Gonzalez, and I really plunged into the study of the construction of Latinx subjectivities in American mass culture from the beginning of the 20th century now into the 21st century. So who knows what really happened that day? Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe I was feeling put upon. But it really changed the course of my career because I stopped being I published a little as a Latin Americanist, but mostly I started writing about American mass culture.
Leads me to my next question. What is Texmex?
Well, that's it. That was the result of 16 years of research into the figuration of Mexicans, of Mexican Americans, of Puerto Ricans, what have you, in American mass culture, convinced me that what we were dealing with was a wonderful, or a hateful fabrication, a textile that had been woven, right? So Tex-Mex, I'm from Laredo. So of course, Tex-Mex, the Tex-Mex music, Tex-Mex food, that has always been in the back of my head. But I wanted to write about it Text-Mex, and that's why the T's and brackets, that habit of, that wonderful practice of ours from the 80s and 90s when we thought we were so cool. But the brackets allowed me to foreground the fact that we were dealing with widely disseminated fabrications, textiles woven adeptly to an end. And the end was the production of recognizable tropes that could be sold and resold and resold and resold again. So Tex-Mex is the story, the backstory of the development of all the ugly things that comes out of our president's mouth. They came from that moment after the turn of the century, the Mexican Revolution, Pancho Villa invading Columbus, New Mexico, where the wall is going up right now as we speak. The construction is right there in Columbus, New Mexico. And from that moment, the United States sent 25,000 troops, the Expeditionary Force, with no less than George Patton, one of the young lieutenants leading men into northern Mexico. They never caught Pancho Villa, but what they brought with them was a retinue of photographers, of postcard salesmen, and newsreel photographers. And in Tex-Mex, there's this wonderful, horrible coincidence that the very moment that the equivalent of Instagram hits us as a kind of social technology, that very second, the United States is at war with Mexico. So you get newsreels of Mexicans, you get postcards of Mexicans, you get photographs of Mexicans, and they're all evil, they're all bandit, they're all dirty, they're all untrustworthy, and an industry is born. And so Tex-Mex, my book, is the story of the invention of that industry. And it came out in 2007. It took me 16 years to publish. I'm very proud of it, but I'm also kind of disgusted because it actually carries within it a kind of blueprint for haters who can be inspired, I guess, by the century of stereotypes that have warped our own consciousness and wreaked havoc with our existential sense of self.
Seductive hallucinations. Where are you seeing the subterranean kind of almost sort of nefarious work happening in spaces today, especially coming in and around the Latinx, right, hallucination that's being constructed?
Well, The phrase seductive hallucination and the subtitle of the book, of course, is a tip of the sombrero to Michel Foucault. It's the reminder that we are not ruled by oppression, but by pleasure. And there's nothing more pleasurable than seeing once again that which we've seen before. We get a little dopamine, like heroin kick, from seeing things we've seen before. And so in the present instance, well, I mean, both you and I have documented this in Brown TV, which we'll get to later, but while there has been an increase in the number of TV or streaming vehicles that feature Latino and Latina protagonists, I would say that today, still by and large, the most common thing you're going to see is a Latino or Latina as a service worker, or a Latino or Latina as a narco, or someone who transports drugs, or someone who's into some sort of nasty, nefarious criminality. So this, I should have called it Tex-Mex profitable hallucinations of the Mexican in America, because there's nothing more bankable than a Latino criminal. I mean, if I sometimes feel I should go up the street to LA and pitch a news show, you know, because I know the trope so well. You know, we're in the wrong business. You know, we're absolutely in the wrong business.
The bad hombres.
Yeah, exactly.
So just talking Brown TV, what a great sort of project, right? Were there, you know, tell me, were there surprises along the way in that journey, that sort of our co-piloting journey of talking #Brown TV?
Yeah, I guess I mean, the biggest surprise was how, I don't even know if I've talked to you about this, how freeing it was for me to be able to write with another person. I don't write with other people. I'm not one of those people in grad school who had a writer's group. My wife, Leela, says I don't play well with others. You know, but the flip side of that was, after I published Texmex, I was kind of stuck. I had my next book contracted, iGene. I wasn't able to finish it. I was kind of in a I don't know, self-created creative prison of sorts. And what writing Brown TV with you allowed me to do was, because of the way we wrote it, in dispatches, in emails, in correspondence. Sometimes I'd just send you a picture, you know, something I'd been thinking about. It really freed me from all of the hangups I guess I had accumulated bringing Texmex to press, which you had a hand in, you know. Texmex was a very difficult book to bring to press because I don't write like a lot of other academics. And I actually figured out when I turned 50 a few years ago that I wasn't supposed to become a professor. The university was supposed to find some way to get rid of me. But they failed, and I'm here, and I'm tenured, so, you know, screw them. So the biggest surprise about Brown TV is that we finished it, and we finished it early, I think. And it came to press on time. And I mean, there were all of the problems that we're used to bringing books to press, you know, especially because of all the pictures and stuff. But I'm very proud of this book. And
yeah, me too. I love this book, and everybody should go buy it, right? Everybody should.
Yes, please. #Brown TV. Please do. What about you? Let me throw it back at you.
You know,
I know you publish a lot of books, but what was different about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, there was an energy and energy coming out of the synergy, and I think you know, putting the same kind of cultural object in front of both of us, and then seeing how our brains kind of interfaced with that and creating knowledge on the spot in and around that object was like just like mind blowing. It was, you know, the best roller coaster ride I've ever been on. Yeah, and I think, you know, being able to share that with others and the feedback we've been getting in the way that we write it as a very accessible work, and at the same time serious, and, you know, there's scholarly rigor, but it's a way, in a way, it's our hallucination that we're inviting people into. That's a productive hallucination, a hallucination that pops the bubble of the dominant hallucination that's been kind of enveloping all of us for so long, right?
Yeah, hallucination is a word for me that has many positive overtones. It's not just the negative idea of a mass produced propaganda that we then inhale unknowingly. I think that you and I in this book went out of our way to write and to engage in such a way that any reader, any general reader, would be interested. I mean, we throw in the pointy-headed intellectual stuff here and there, but by and large, it's you and me watching television and talking to each other about it.
Yeah, and inviting everybody to sit on the couch with us, right?
That's right. Come on over. Come on over.
Tell me a little bit, Bill, about, you know, how you bring this into your classroom spaces and why it matters.
Ever since I began, this includes, I've been a professor now since '88, so that's 33 years. I did the math the other day, and it's like 66, 70 or so different classes that I've taught, and every one of them has had significant representation of Chicano writers and Latin American directors and Latinx creatives. All of my classes in literature are a mix of not just literature, but of film, of comic books, of television, and now of streaming media. And one of the things I've done over my career is I've always been asked to teach these large lecture courses for general education audiences. And I've never looked at that as a burden. In fact, I love teaching non-majors as much as I love teaching literature majors, but I love going into the masses and trying to infect. I mean, that's the only word, you know, creatively vaccinate thousands now of students, over 10,000 students I've had, maybe 15. Vaccinate them against this plethora of demeaning and disgusting stereotypes that make it easy for the general audience to think of Latinos and Latinas as second-rate citizens. It's not that we are second-rate, it's that there's a reward for thinking in that way, because then you just go with the flow. You go with the flow. It's really easy. My classes are very theme-driven. I try to catch on to something that is very current, and sometimes I'll even pander. Like last semester, I taught a 300-student course called Naked Sexy Beasts. And the reason I did that was I was told that because of changes in the general education rules for the California State University, that the class wouldn't fill. And of course it filled. It filled because the title was eye-grabbing. I use eye-grabbing graphics. I teach contemporary works with classics. I'll cut in a Black Mirror episode. I'll throw a Love and Rockets comic book at them, all driven by the theme. And though these courses, by and large, are not focused on Latinx culture, I've only maybe over the years taught 5 or 6 classes that were pure Chicano lit or Latina lit or Latin American lit. There are always Mexican American writers and creatives in my classes. And they're there because it's my area of specialization, but they're also there because they're good, because they rock. Just before we went into panic, pandemonium, COVID-19 mode. The last class that I taught for my beautiful undergraduates in English, I'm teaching American Lit from the Civil War to the present. And it's called Seductive American Nightmares, right? And I taught Tomás Rivera's Y no se lo tragó la tierra, and the earth did not swallow me. It was one of the most moving classes I've ever had. It was probably so moving because I knew that's it, my day gig is up. I'm gonna be talking in these little boxes to Zoom televisions instead of being in a room with people who've read the same book. But Tomás Rivera's novel, which some might see as simple or small, or blew their minds, and we had a remarkable class. So this ability to move in the classroom between canonical and non-canonical works, written works and screened works, increasingly now streamed works, has allowed me to have an impact I wouldn't otherwise have.
Beautifully stated. You know, sort of taking us back to our kind of, maybe we have COVID-19, but we've had, right, this kind of, oh gosh, what you talked about infection, you talked about hallucination, and it's kind of all happening, and it's been happening. We are the majority underrepresented historically in this country demographically, and yet, so we're in those 18% range, and yet we're less than 3% represented. And as you mentioned already, the bad hombre, right, the narco, you know, the kinds of things that we've been sort of represented when we are on the screen. Yeah, like, what's your gut, your visceral response to this? I mean, finally, a cold Latina, that's how, like, Tecate beer is sold, right?
I mean, the first one, I mean, like you, I'm a consumer. I'm just a consumer of mass culture. And so the first thing I do when I see these things is I laugh. You know, in Texmex, I talked about growing up in Laredo, and when Speedy Gonzalez came on Channel 8, you know, they own like 2 or 3 different little 8-minute shorts or 6-minute Warner Brothers shorts. When they showed them, oh, me and my sister would be doing backflips and laughing our asses off because we were just not used to, on the American channels, hearing that accent, even though it's Mel Blanc, right? You know, talking like these, and you would hear that and it would bring joy, right? But so the first reaction, I think, is the human reaction when you see a stereotype is, oh, I see that, I get it, I get that. The thing you got to do, or the thing that I ask my students to do, my readers to do, is then to take the next step, which is what we do in the university. And we ask ourselves, if laughter is the most basic human emotion, what triggers it? And in this regard, it's not just the recognition, it's the repeated recognition of pejorative representations that then you internalize at a sick psychic level. See, I mean, that's the downside of these representations. For instance, you know, you've got Sexy Latina, cover of Latina magazine, right? ¿Cómo se llama? What's her name?
Michelle Rodriguez.
Right. No, is that Michelle Rodriguez?
No, it's not. No, my bad. Why am I blanking on her?
Because we're stupid, man.
This is Jane the Virgin.
That's right. So there's nothing wrong with a beautiful Latina woman. Yeah, they're attractive, but the preponderance of that representation, the fact that you've got to choose Latina as sexy bombshell or Latina as maid service worker, and that these two tropes predominate. And sometimes they're the both, right? You've got devious maids, and they're service workers, and they're sexy, right? And produced by a Latina, the show.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my reaction to this is it varies. I mean, sometimes I get upset. Sometimes I just laugh. Sometimes I get turned on. Sometimes I get disgusted. We are subject to the entertainment that we watched, and we are its victims. And we're also like the guys chained to the rock in the cave in Plato's Republic, Book 7. Sometimes we don't even know that what we're looking at is fabricated. We just think it's reality. Because a camera shot it. It's got to be real, right? It's got to be based on a true story. But so I get all kinds of emotions when I see these kinds of images.
Yeah, Gina Rodriguez, my friend. Yeah. And then, of course, we have, J-Lo, in sort of all these different ways that she's been kind of represented. One of us needs to just do a book on J-Lo, right?
I think that would be you. I think that's you. I think that's you, because I had a friend who knew her, and she's not the nicest person. At least that's the word on the street. So I don't think I could write a book about her.
All right. So, yeah. So, Bill, tell our audiences a little bit about, your methods in the classroom. I know one thing that you're famous for. One, your students absolutely love you. The other thing that you're known for is packing out the house. I mean, like you said, there was, a course that people were worried that it wouldn't have the enrollments, and you end up, enrolling over 300 students, et cetera. What is the trademark Nericcio? I mean, what is the...
Loud. I'm loud, I'm improvisational, I'm performative, I'm extroverted. For instance, every Halloween, I come dressed up in costume. I taught Carlos Fuentes' Aura last year. I began the class in full darkness. I taught by candlelight with the Gregorian chants playing. I'll bring in guest speakers. I've brought you many times. I'll bring in celebrities. I like to provide for my students what I like, and I like to be surprised. I like to not know what's going to happen next. I like to be taken on a journey. And so some of my methods in the classroom are really, it's like a concerted or sustained effort at juxtaposition. I always like to set things side by side for the students in ways that will be disturbing or illuminating or challenging. And I like to make them laugh. I could tell you one of the most amazing moments of my life as a professor is I was teaching Intro to Lit class focused on comedy. That was the theme. It was just called comedy. And the centerpiece of the class was the Seinfeld episode where Jerry and George and Kramer and Elaine have a bet about who can hold out from masturbating the longest. Okay. So it's a sitcom. It's a 22-minute teleplay, right? That's what a sitcom is. But when you watch a sitcom in a room with 500 people, it was amazing. It was transformative. I'd never heard people laugh so loud as a collective. I mean, maybe one of those comedy concerts like with George Lopez in San Antonio, where you've got like 5,000 people. But for me in the classroom, watching Seinfeld, teaching comedy, but being in the dark in that room with 500 other souls, 1,000 eyes fixed on the screen, laughing their souls out, it was just amazing. So I like to keep things moving. Like I say, play with props, I play with the room, I play with the lights. Open every class with music, with a music video whose theme is tied secretly in some way to what I'm going to be lecturing that day. It's very participatory. I get incredible engagement from the students. We do have a discussion in the class. Even the 500 student class, I had 8 TAs running around with microphones. Everybody got a chance to speak that wanted to speak. So I just like to have fun. You know, life's short. I've always said, you know, I want on my tombstone, you know, he wasted no one's time. Because I don't know about you, but in undergrad and grad school, I mean, oh my God, I mean, I had some magnificent professors, but I had some crap professors, and they reassured me that damn if I couldn't do better than them in the classroom. So I think because my background is working class, because I'd always done community theater, because I've been acting since I was like 7, the classroom for me is just an extension of that, and I try to make it a kind of movable feast of the imagination for my students.
Love that. Movable feast for the imagination. You're also director of SDSU Press. God, I mean, okay, so here, let's put the other hat on, but you know, I mean, of course, I'm sure you get this question all the time, you know, how do you manage to do it all? But maybe the larger question would be like, why?
I love books. I love design. I started working in 1994 with Harry Polkenhorn, then the director of SDSU Press. And I kind of hoodwinked him and convinced him that I knew how to do graphic design. I'd never designed a book in my life. I designed one cover for a journal called Camera Obscura with a Speedy Gonzalez collage that I designed back in the day. But he let me, and I taught myself how to design and eventually how to do layout and how to typeset books over the 20-some years that I was working at the press. And then 3 or 4 years ago, Harry retired, not to be an old fart retired professor. He retired from being a professor and now is a full-time psychoanalyst. We got some great professors at San Diego State. So now he's a shrink and I get to run the press. I run the press because it's a labor of love. I receive no salary for running a major West Coast university press, and I know people tell me all the time, "Well, you should negotiate, and you know, you're not getting your worth." And that's true. I should negotiate for a big fat salary for running SDSU Press. But the trouble with that, and the university defunded SDSU Press in 2009 in the middle when the bubble burst in California. And so they cut the $20,000 a year funding they used to give. And people tell me, you should negotiate to get that back. And the answer to both those questions is when people pay you money, they own you. They tell you what to do. They cramp your style. And for me, SDSU Press is a labor of love. And I get to work with a great team of editors at San Diego State. We have 8 other professors who are the internal board of directors. We've got an external board all over the country of directors, and including yourself. And so with my graduate student interns and undergraduate interns, we just make it work.
Yeah, it's amazing. And also you're giving those students you're basically setting them up to have like this other incredible skill set, right? Kind of industry level skill set. Bill, let me ask you, you're publishing graphic novels, graphic nonfiction. It's in this press. You have your imprint now. I mean, the world maybe isn't even.
I am the host now. Hey, I can't hear you.
Hold on, Bill. I don't know what happened there.
You froze. You
Okay,
totally froze in the middle of that.
okay, let me, yeah.
What
Hold.
happened with you? Could you still hear me?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're recording, which we are. Okay, good. I'll just cut that out. Okay, good.
Okay.
So let me do this one more time. Share screen. So we were just talking about a model comics, and we are recording.
Is there a reason that the slide is cut off at the top, or that's just how it does?
I think it just I can redo the. No, let's just keep going. Let's
Okay.
So yeah, so you're publishing, Bill. You have an imprint, a model comics, you know, for with
Yeah.
SDSU Press. You're publishing graphic nonfiction, fiction. You know, tell me, like, what in the heck, like an academic press that's gone for this space?
Hey, we're gonna have to pause. Are you seeing me?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I left the screen and I don't know why. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. One more time. Go ahead.
So SDSU Press director, and now you are kind of curating an imprint of the press that is dedicated to graphic nonfiction and fiction. Is the world not the limit for you, Bill?
I'm jealous. I saw that you had, what is it, Latinx graphics or Latino graph? What do you have with OSU?
Yeah, Latino graphics.
I saw Latino graphics. I'm there. Who the hell does he think he is? Running his own comic book publishing company. I could do that. And so I started Amatul Comics, and we've done 2 issues now. Your own book, Latinx Comic Book Storytelling, and More Than Money by, oh my God, she's going to kill me. Dominguez. There she is, Claudia Dominguez. I love comic books. I learned how to read at my grandma Anna's bed on 619 Mier in Laredo, Texas. She used to hide comic books underneath the mattress, and me and Josie, my sister, would go over to Anna's house and we'd read Sad Sack, we'd read Betty and Veronica, Richie Rich, Big Lotta, Little Dot, Casper, Hot Stuff. I loved those comics. I'm lucky enough to have been published writing about comics. And now I'm the director of the press. And like I said, they don't give us any money, so we can do whatever the hell we want. And so I saw you with a comic book initiative, and I said, we can do that. We can do that. And hopefully in the future, you know, we can collaborate. You know, it doesn't need to be Marvel versus DC, okay? It could be Marvel and DC. You know?
All right, I'm down. I'm down. The big 2 will be model comics and Latino graphics. I like that. So Mextasy, you now, okay, now you're doing traveling exhibits and a TV show. Tell the world about this.
Well, the TV show's not going to happen, but the art exhibit did. What happened was that I got a call from a museum in McAllen, Texas, actually from South Texas College. Rachel Brown called me about 10 years ago, and what had happened was that there had been an increasing number of seizures of art. So artists from Mexico who were going to exhibit in the Valley, sometimes they would get their art seized at the border. And this happened. This happened to an artist who had been invited to South Texas College to do an exhibition. And so they were left without an exhibition. And Rachel had been reading Texmex because a friend of hers had suggested it to her through Facebook. So I gotta give Zuckerberg some credit, that son of a bitch. But she calls me and says, Professor Nericcio, Bill, have you ever thought of doing your book Texmex as a gallery exhibition? And of course, I said, well, no, I've never thought of that. And she said that she read the book closely, and she saw that many of the artifacts in the book were from my personal collection. So she said, why don't you put all those things in a box and we'll do an exhibition based on your book? And I said, okay. And then she paused a minute and she said, I'm so sorry. We can only pay you $3,000. And I said, what the hell? As English professors, we're lucky to get $200 in bus fare for giving a lecture. So I put the phone down and I screamed, ah! And then I said, oh, I'd be happy to do that. So we had an exhibition and it was a huge hit. I mean, it was hit. And I love, as much as I love the world of publishing and making books, museum galleries, art galleries. I mean, to be curating my own show with my own artworks and my own collection of art was just incredible. So there's Mextasy, which is based on Texmex, Seductive Hallucinations of the Mexican in America. And then I got a call from 2 Mexican producers who wanted to turn Mextasy, the whole idea of the history of Latinos in the past and in the present, making an impact on American culture. They wanted to make a TV pilot. And so I spent 2 years of my life developing a TV show. We produced a full-length pilot. We pitched. I pitched to Lionsgate. We almost got picked up. We pitched to HBO. We pitched to NBC. We pitched to National Geographic. And I went full on Hollywood, full on Miami Beach. I hung out with celebrities. I spent 2 years trying to land the show. It didn't get picked up. So Mextasy, the TV show, is, as we say, in development, on turnaround, or on hiatus. But Mextasy, the exhibition, if it hadn't been for COVID-D, I would have had 3 exhibitions this spring right now.
Well, it's I feel like Texmex is the text that keeps on giving, Bill.
Yeah, when those royalty checks come in, I'm very happy.
Yeah. So, this is kind of bringing all of your sort of knowledge to a particular moment that just happened, a very sort of significant historical moment, the Super Bowl 2020 halftime, and the crazy kinds of responses in and around that. But I for the first time, I've heard the use of wife as a verb. I want to wife her. Right? Someone had tweeted with J-Lo, I want to wife J-Lo. Anyway, apart from sort of dissecting that whole space, what was your, this is a kind of incredible moment for us, right? You already know I'm not a big J-Lo fan. I already confessed, I already did. So I wasn't expecting much. I was really, delighted, pleased, wowed by the halftime performance. In particular, because of my biases, by Shakira, who I really dig and love, and I've followed her career and her outreach work that she does in communities and so forth. But as a spectacle, to have 2 Latinas front and center at the Super Bowl, America's Super Bowl, that was like, wow, míralas. And they killed. It was a beautiful performance, just out of this world amazing. Yeah, really, really extraordinary. And yeah, like you, I mean, having this kind of, American Pie kind of moment, and suddenly we've got the empamada there, right? And the sopapilla and the, all the goodness of our culture is kind of being represented. And nobody holding back and completely kind of owning themselves on the stage there. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, the children in cages, you know,
Yeah,
who don't
yeah,
expect that.
yeah. No, it's very. You know, I think what you and I are both saying here is that for once, maybe in a very mainstream space, the choreographed performance.
Right. Let's pause.
Okay.
Let's pause and restart. Someone's ringing my doorbell, and it might be something urgent. So
Okay.
I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, Bill, I think what we're both getting at here is that for the first time in a very mainstream space, we have this kind of choreographing of a performance where Latinxes across the country are the ideal audience. They're the intended audience, and anyone else is kind of secondary, right? They're welcome to the show, but it was really for us, right?
Well, as much as it can be at the NFL's biggest event, I think that it shows that a significant percentage of suits in corporate America are getting wise to the fact that this brown wave isn't going anywhere. You know, that our present president excluded.
Yeah.
The future is very much of the United States is one that's going to be decidedly Latino and Latina, and that the entertainment as a result is going to have to be a reflection of this growing mass of people, not just consumers. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Super Bowl is all about eyes on the screen and corporate dollars, and this show was no different. This Super Bowl halftime show.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've got, you know, mainstream entertainers choreographing children in cages, Puerto Rican nationalism, as people are quaffing their beer across America, it was a remarkable moment in United States entertainment history.
So if you were going to pick one area where you felt like there was a real vitality happening in Latinx pop culture, where would that be, Bill?
Yeah. For me, I'm kind of torn. I'm torn between the idea that we're going to, you know what, let's pause. I'm going to decouple messages from my Mac.
So Bill, if you were to pick an area of sort of cultural production today, pop culture, especially thinking about Latinx creations, agency, complexity, where would you put your energy? Where are you seeing the energy happening today?
Yeah, for me right now, it's a neck and neck tie between Latinx graphic arts and illustration and Latinx fiction and nonfiction, creative writing. When it comes to creative writing, right now I've always been a huge fanboy of the work of Miriam Gerba, Long Beach a school teacher by day and amazing New York Times lauded writer by night, and one of the women, of course, who led the charge in the anti-American dirt movement, which was quite a scandal, quite a spectacle. Her book Mean, I've taught it now 4 times, never fails to get an electric reaction from my students. And my student body, I mean, we're an HSI at San Diego State, so there's a fair number of Latinos in my general education class, but my classes are predominantly, I don't know, 60, 70%, 55, maybe 60, 70% white. They dig it. They love Miriam Gerba. She's the most popular speaker I've had there in ages, other than yourself. And then in illustration, I mean, not only do we have the ongoing Dickens-like career of the brothers Hernandez, who are still bringing it on into 2020, but we've got a whole new generation of graphic artists whose work I follow largely on Instagram, right? Someone needs to write the article about Latinx artists on Instagram, because increasingly museums are not where you're going to see the best fine art. It's going to be on Instagram. Who would have thunk it that a social media vehicle would be such a highly charged, successful platform for the arts?
Thank you, Bill. And what can I say? Thank you for the gift of your time, of the journey that you've had and that you will continue to have with your students, your readers, your public audiences, with your curated spaces. Thank you, Bill Nericcio, for joining Professor Latinx.
Thank you, Fede. It was a blast. Had a good time.